most Christians have a view of the soul that is very consistent and necessary for the transgender issue to work. What do the transgender advocates say? They say that they are really not identical with their physical body. Their identity is different than their physical body. And their true identity is somehow something different, whether it's the inner self, whether it's the soul or something. I don't think there's any standard view of what the inner self is or what the true identity is from a transgender person. But what's interesting is that most Christians, or at least many Christians' view of the soul is such a way that it's consistent with what is required for a transgender view of the person to be able to be possible. Now, does that make the Christian view of the soul in that regard wrong? No. But I think it does show that it is very problematic. So trans people say that the true self isn't the body, it's something else, whether it's their feelings, whether it's the soul, the inner self, whatever. I don't think there's any kind of uniformity there. Now, what do Christians say? What is the typical Christian view of the soul? Well, I think it's what this journal article says. Now, this is a professional journal here, and it is called the Journal of the Evangelical Theological Society. And this particular article is called A Linguistic Argument for God's Existence. Now, as an apologist and philosopher, I'm always interested in God's existence, and I'm also interested in linguistics. So I thought I would look at that article, and this came out in 2015. But what was interesting had really nothing to do with God or linguistics, and this is what was interesting here to me. It says, the proposition that we as humans have, in addition to our physical bodies, a non-material component is referred to in philosophical circles as substance dualism. What in the world is that? It is also known as Cartesian dualism in honor of René Descartes, who argued that the mind, or the soul, is a non-physical substance, the seat of consciousness and self-awareness, and to be distinguished from the brain as the seat of intelligence. This author, John Baumgartner and authors, and Jeremy Lyon, rightly attribute the substance dualist view to Descartes. Descartes was a 16th century mathematician who wanted to reset philosophy because he thought there's too much debate going on with philosophy. So he wanted to begin at a point that could not be doubted. You probably have heard the phrase, I think, therefore I am, straight from Descartes. He wanted to start with something that was undoubtable and then deduce everything else regarding knowledge from there. Well, the thing he thought was undoubtable was, I think, and if I think, then, and if I'm doubting, then I must exist, because if I don't exist, I can't doubt. So Descartes showed that the soul is the most obvious aspect of our being, and from there we have to deduce the body. Now, Descartes isn't the first person to adopt this kind of dualism between the soul and the body. It goes way back into ancient Greek thinking to probably the first is Plato, who made this sharp distinction between the soul and the body. And Plato taught that the true self is the soul, and it's pretty well imprisoned in the body. And so at death, the soul is freed from the body. Well, this kind of thinking cropped up into Christian theology through Gnosticism and just Platonic thinking as well. And many Christians held and still hold that the true self is the soul. Okay, the true self is the soul. It's not the physical body. The body, in some ways, is depending on the person. Of course, there's not a universal view of all this, but some Christians teach that the body is just not the true self, not good, and the true self is the soul. That is straight up substance dualism, that you've got a full-blown substance, the soul, with a full-blown substance, namely the body. And there are a number of problems with this. One is that if the soul or mind is a complete unified substance, and if the body is a complete unified substance, then how do the two relate to each other? This is called the interaction problem. How do they interact? Or the mind-body problem. And theologians and philosophers since Descartes have tried to solve that problem if they took on the substance dualist view. I think there's also a scriptural problem with this, in that the Bible does not teach that the soul is a complete thing apart from the body in a complete sense. Of course, we think that the soul can survive death, but not as a complete substance. We think that according to the Bible and good theology and philosophy, that the soul and the body form a unified being. That, of course, the body without the soul is not a true substance, it's dead, and the soul without the body is incomplete. But for Descartes and the substance dualists, the soul is a complete thing in and of itself. It can exist apart from the body in a complete way. Well, the Bible says the body is good, and the Bible teaches that we'll get our bodies back at the resurrection. So there's no reason to look down on matter or the body, as some people did in the ancient times or even still do today. But the reason that this view that says if you hold to a view, says if the position that we as humans have in addition to our physical bodies, a non-material component, is referred to in philosophical circles as substance dualism. That is written by these authors as if it is the only view out there for the soul and the body. And I found that very interesting because this is an academic journal, and that is simply not the only view out there. In fact, it's a very bad view because of the philosophical problems about how does the mind and the soul interact with the body if they're complete substances. Because how can a completely immaterial thing interact with a totally material body? Descartes' answer was a part of the brain called the pineal gland. But the problem with that is it also is a physical part of the body. It would require some mechanism by which the immaterial soul or mind would interact with it too. So it wasn't really an answer. And people had tried to answer that problem ever since. Well, it's only a problem if you make it a problem. In other words, you don't have to start with substance dualism. It is not the only game in town when it comes to our soul and body and how they relate. This is called philosophical anthropology. Anthropology being the study of man. So what is a better view? Well, it's the view that goes back. It was taught along with the substance dualist view throughout the church. Actually, the hylomorphic view that I'm trying to advocate for goes back a long time as well, even before the church, to Aristotle. So whereas Plato taught that the soul is the true person and the body is kind of a prison for the soul, Aristotle, Plato's student, taught that rather than the soul being a complete substance in and of itself, the soul and the body make up one complete unity. And separated, they are incomplete and can't function. In fact, Aristotle didn't even hold to the idea that the soul survives death. There's a little bit of debate on that, but I don't want to get into that right now. But his view, called hylomorphism, was passed down through the church with thinkers such as Thomas Aquinas. This is a better view of the soul-body unity because it avoids the mind-body problem, the interaction problem, and it is seemingly more accurate with the Bible in saying that there's one whole person, not two individual substances just kind of smashed together in some way. But it's not just a made-up view to solve problems. It was a way that was explanatory of how the soul and body work together. And the hylomorphic view, there's a lot more here, I'm not going to go into all the details, but the hylomorphic view really explains how the soul and body, or the mind and body, really the soul, work together as a complete unity. The problem with the substance dualist view is it doesn't seem to be biblical because it seems to put too much emphasis on the soul apart from the body, and it causes this mind-body problem. And this doesn't make it wrong, but it's interesting that this view of the true self is your inner soul is very consistent with what we're told by transgenderism. To make the transgender argument, you have to maintain that there is something that's really you apart from the body. Well, in the hylomorphic view, there's nothing there that is a complete true you apart from the body. So the transgender platform, what they're arguing for, simply does not work on this hylomorphic view, because you are one complete unified self. You are not divided between your body and your true self, the inner soul. I just wanted to throw this out there that we need to, one, have a strong view and an accurate view of the soul, just because we want to have accurate, true views of things. And the substance dualist view is, again, not the only game in town, contrary to our authors in this article. But it also causes problems. The mind-body problem, I think it's wrong scripturally, and it plays into this view of transgenderism that says that, well, the true self really is your inner self, your feelings, your soul, or whatever. On the hylomorphic view, you are one complete unity, and we're going to be raised as one complete unity, and we're treated as one complete unity in the Bible. So I hope this was interesting to you. If you liked it and found value, please like and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you.